Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Blather 171. We're getting old. The Great Backfire. This is not the Great Reset, so the morons at YouTube need not put any clarification. This is the Great Backfire. Backfire as in fire coming out of the rear end of, well, we're going to find out in a moment. And this is Saul Montes-Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from still Florida. And with me, right over there, Thomas Wictor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers, and suffering, patiently suffering denizen of California. So, well, patiently, to a degree. How are you doing, Thomas, and how are you enduring Californication?
Well, our current governor has decided he's going to make his national splash by pushing the 28th Amendment, which will essentially restrict the usage of handguns to like 8 people in the country. Not handguns, all guns.
Guns, yes.
This is
BB guns, water guns.
Yep, this is
glue guns.
As somebody pointed out, all the restrictions that he's pushing in this amendment are all the restrictions that exist in California already. California leads the country in mass shootings, and Newsom wants to sponsor the 28th Amendment in order to prevent mass shootings by doing to the country what he's done in California that has done nothing at all to restrict mass shootings. So that's the caliber of person out there who's got the full support of Californians, as far as I can tell.
Yep. Fortunately, California is not the U.S.
No.
Yeah, you know that it is interesting because everybody pays lip service to the founding fathers, but nobody reads them.
No.
And nobody gives a hoot about why they wrote what they wrote. And in the case of the Second Amendment, we had a wonderful explanation from Thomas Jefferson that was inspired of crimes and punishments by Cesare Beccaria, del delitti e delle pene. And what Beccaria writes in the 1760s and Jefferson makes his own in the 1770s floors all of the arguments of idiots like Governor Gruesome and all of these idiocies, from the President Vegetable, that our founding fathers did not mean that people should have weapons of war. Now, what the fuck is a weapon of war? Last I looked, $100 drone is a weapon of war.
Well, in addition, they're talking about semi-automatic rifles. During the Revolutionary War, Washington and Benjamin Franklin were going to give an inventor, I think, I don't know, 100 pounds or something like that, which, that'd be like what? I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars today to develop a semi-automatic rifle. And this was in the era of flintlocks. And so they knew darn well what a semi-automatic rifle was. And it was the exact kind of weapon they wanted civilians to own in this country. So,
yeah.
And
of course, they had no problem with civilians owning cannons.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, this is so basic; it's ridiculous that Um, it's a certain type of person that misuses firearms, and to punish every single citizen in the country over the actions of what are I once calculated the number of murderers there are in this country, and it's 0.007%, and
Yes,
that's all murderers. And of
yes,
those murderers, about, I don't know, 40% of them use firearms. So then we're at what? We're at an even tinier fraction of the general population using weapons to commit. I mean, it's like everything else. Hopefully, we'll get to Ukraine later on. Um, the news coming out of Ukraine is attempting to convince people that, you know, everything is lost for Ukraine, and the alleged destruction of an entire convoy of Western vehicles didn't happen. Um, the Ukrainians lost a Leopard tank, and they retrieved all the damaged Bradleys that they could salvage, and the total loss was one Leopard tank and four Bradleys, but none of the crew and none of the troops inside. So they can get more Bradleys, they can get more Leopard tanks, and all of this is factored in. So
well,
it's
under normal circumstances, the attacking force will have 3 times the casualties of the defending force
yeah,
because, they're in better position, they're entrenched, they've had a year to prepare. This is baked in. Now, you can sound callous, if you will, if you say, well, they're going to lose 20,000 people, and that's just fine. The alternative is to lose several million.
the
And
alternative also is to give Russia free reign. As I mean, it's clear now that everything Putin has told the West is a lie, and he wants to rebuild his little empire while I'm sure he's in total denial about his own health. And he wants to go for the Baltics, and then he wants to go for Poland because he says those are all historic Russian
yeah,
lands.
and if you factor in Medvedev, who is apparently lost what remaining shred of sanity he had, maybe even Berlin,
Yeah. No, I mean,
because yeah, he's that stupid.
the Russians, if you listen to them, and if you take their rhetoric at face value, they think that they can scare the world by detonating a thermonuclear weapon, and that will prove to the world that they mean business, and we won't react in kind. And they're right, we won't react in kind. What we'll do is we'll send in an entire wing of B-52s and an entire wing of B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, and it's going to be the end of the entire Russian offensive and possibly even defensive capabilities.
До свидания, товарищи.
Yeah, no, we don't have.
They're fact.
We're going to carpet bomb, not even carpet bomb. Okay, all our B-52 our B-2 stealth bombers have rotary dispensers, and each B-2 can carry 80 JDAM 500-pound bombs. You can I mean, one single bomber could take out all of Putin's residences, every single one, because you bet we know where they all are. And they're talking about
on the short end, a single squadron of F-16s is going to give the Ukrainians air superiority and night Felicia. But in the meantime, what the world is trying to do is let the Ukrainians defend their country. We just supply them with what they need. And that's what they're doing. And I have a feeling Zelensky finally, about 12 hours ago, said that the counterattack is now officially in full swing.
Well,
something they hadn't said before, because you and I discussed You do not telegraph the enemy your movements, schmucks.
They had a massive breakthrough. They broke through the defenses
Yes,
in the southern part of Ukraine,
in
and
Zaporizhia.
yeah, and once they've made enough of a dent, they're going to send in the Challengers. They're going to send in everything that's designed to go very fast. And the Russians released a video that showed one of their loitering munitions hitting a Leopard tank, and they claim that it burned. The ammunition in the bustle burned.
Yep.
Um, we don't know the fate of that tank because the Ukrainians aren't telling us. And
No, as
I
well they should.
I support that. Hide all
Yeah,
your losses. Let
of
the
course.
Russians.
Don't give the enemy any information they can use.
Besides,
That's 101.
the Russians claim they destroyed 50 Leopard tanks and 150 Bradleys, and it's just like, beep, 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 beep. So
I don't think they had 150 Bradleys and
no,
50
of course not.
Leopard 2s, but that's neither here nor there. Uh,
The Bradley is a great
yes,
vehicle, but the Swedes have given them this. I think it's called a TV-90. This thing is a
yes,
monster. This is probably the greatest infantry fighting vehicle ever built, and those were shipped to Ukraine without telling anyone.
much fanfare. Yeah, and let's face it. Of course, Ukraine is going to have losses and casualties.
Of
You
course,
cannot fight a full force, let's say, war against an army like the Russians, which is not the best in the world, as they have proved time and again, but still an army with great capacity for destruction and
it's the
not
artillery.
afraid to use it against civilians, against anything.
The 85% of all the casualties are caused by artillery, and the Russians
Yeah,
have tons of artillery. So
tons of artillery.
yeah,
So they, of course, they will. Uh, it's to be expected.
this
What
is the
happens? What
go ahead.
happens a month from now is a different story.
This is the first war between, for lack of a better term, two modern armies.
Yes,
This is the first one. You know, I mean, okay, the North Vietnamese had tanks, yeah, but they relied mostly on the Viet Cong and hit and run and all of that. So this is the first time you've had. Um, I mean, technically, the first Gulf War was one modern army versus another modern army, but
yeah, but Iraq was not a modern army.
it wasn't a modern army, and I don't recall them using their artillery all that much.
No,
We
no.
didn't suffer.
But I recall how handy came in all of that Russian equipment they had.
Well, that's the thing that nobody seems to have. I mean, to this day, there's still people telling us just wait until the Russians. They're just waiting for the right moment. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're gone. They're dead.
you
Um,
might as well wait for Comet Haley to come back. Uh, the, people are mentioning it on the chat, so I'm going to bring it in. Uh, the dam.
ah,
Oh, damn! They blew the dam. Who's the damn asshole who damn blew the damn dam? Uh, it was the Russians.
of course.
They blew it up. About a month ago, you and I discussed the beachheads that the Ukrainians were making on the south side of the Dnieper, in those islands, in the swampy area uh, across the river from Kherson. Well, if they were still there, they're not there anymore, and it allowed the Russians to concentrate their efforts in defending two-thirds of the front, because this one-third is kind of fucked up. Yes, it will eventually dry up, and yes, once it dries up, an advance from Kherson is to be expected. But in the meantime, they're doing the other thing we discussed some time ago of going through Zaporizhia to Melitopol and eventually the Grand Prize Mariupol, which is going to cut off the land bridge to Crimea. And in this case, the Russians shot their feet because they fucked up the provision of water to Crimea. That's going to be interesting. Other people are worried about the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. The last of the reactors was turned off. Uh, I don't see a problem anytime in the near future. They have more than enough water in that reservoir. And of course, once they shut off the reactor, the production of heat stops.
Well, also it was running at a third the power anyway, so
Yeah.
this was just your typical alarmism. And okay, um, you know, Tucker Carlson has his new show, and he said, of course, the Ukrainians did it, but he didn't explain how they did it. The
Or
only
why?
the only way you can destroy a dam is from the inside,
Yeah.
because that thing is built of such. It's built of massively powered concrete in order to hold back many, 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 many tens, if not hundreds of
Millions.
millions of tons of water.
Yeah.
So you can't. Um, the British had dam buster bombs in World War II. They didn't work. They eventually did figure out. They created this nightmare munition. The bomber flew at almost lake top level, and it dropped this rolling drum. And what the drum did was it skipped and rolled all the way up on the surface of the water up to the dam. Then it sank down to the base and it detonated at the base, because the goal is to create a crack, and then the
Yes.
water pressure does the
The
rest.
water pressure will do the rest of the work in an hour or in a week.
The
Eh,
Ukrainians do not have okay. The British dam busting dams, or bombs rather, they were like 100 feet long. I mean, they were massive. The
yeah.
Ukrainians don't have heavy enough artillery, and they don't have any aerial.
Maybe they used a Moab.
No, I mean,
I'm being facetious, you know that.
it. I mean, the Russians had a dam expert on one of their premier propaganda shows, and nobody gave him the memo that the Ukrainians did it. So he went on to say that the only way a dam can be blown up like that is from the inside.
Yeah.
And they reminded him that the Russians control that edge of the dam, and he kind of went,
Oh, yeah.
"Oops."
Oh, the Russians control the whole dam. And the bridge that connects the dam road to the Ukrainian controlled territory was blown up a long time ago. The Ukrainians cannot get to the dam. The
No,
idea that, like in some Hollywood movie in the 50s, they sent a dirty dozen to climb down the entrails of the dam and blow it up from the inside is preposterous. It's absolutely bullshit. There are two possibilities and only two possibilities here. One, the Russians blew it up, which matches with their usual technique, although perhaps they did it 2 weeks too early. The second one is incompetence. They closed the hatches to build up the reservoir in order to have the biggest possible consequence to the dam bridging, and it is possible that they overdid it. And the sheer pressure of the record high levels of the reservoir broke the dam. It's possible. Unlikely, but
well,
possible.
the official story is that the Ukrainians blew up the dam, but the Russians evacuated all their troops less than 10 minutes after the explosion of the dam. Now,
Amazing how that works.
they don't have Star Trek transporters, as far as I know.
Oh,
So
Scotty,
that's a flat out
it,
lie. But
it wasn't Scotty Vladimirovich who
No,
transported them out?
no, it wasn't. And it's. I mean, again, like if you're getting your news from Tucker Carlson, then you're getting Russian propaganda, but
Yep.
you're also getting stupid propaganda. Because
Yep.
if you sat Tucker in a room and you started asking him any factual questions about any topic, he wouldn't be able to answer it. This is a man with no factual knowledge about any
No.
subject, as far as I can tell.
But he would laugh hysterically.
He would laugh, and that's fine. But it that type of damage could only be accomplished from the inside. It
Yes.
happened on the Russian side. The Russians did it. Why is this impossible to accept? The Russians did it, and it was a turning point. A whole lot of stuff is going to be is already happening behind the scenes. Breitbart made a sad face because Biden signed off on another $2 billion to Ukraine. $2 billion, nothing. $2 billion. We spend $1 billion every 4.5 minutes or something like that. So
Yeah.
we gave them 9 minutes of spending. Woohoo! But you know,
And I insist, dollar for dollar is the money best spent in 30 years of government spending.
yeah, no,
What we have gotten in return is priceless.
it's priceless,
And it will save us trillions down the road.
yeah, because okay, the Chinese have decided, okay, we're on Russia's side. Good choice. The brilliant Chinese turn out to be even stupider than the Russians. They're sending them armored personnel carriers, 4-wheelers, and drones. These are the same drones that the Ukrainians use. Ergo, okay, that attack that cost the Ukrainians one Leopard tank, they immediately figured out how to counter that. And if everybody's using the same drones, then the Ukrainians can figure out how to counter the Russian drones, but the Russians lack the equipment to counter the Ukrainian drones. So once again, the Russians and the Chinese shot themselves in the foot.
Yep.
You know, whatever.
You know why they shot themselves in the foot?
Because they're out of touch with reality.
No, because they can't find their balls.
Ah,
Otherwise, they'd be shooting themselves in their balls.
okay.
It is ridiculous. Things are progressing elsewhere. You know that Nagorno-Karabakh is back in play. The
Yes.
Armenians who joined the International Criminal Tribunal in The Hague, to the chagrin of Putin, are questioning their entire arrangement with them. The Georgians are trying to figure out how to get Abkhazia and Ossetia back. And everybody in the world who's been a military client of the Russians is questioning their own sanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because one thing the Russians have demonstrated is that their top line military equipment ain't worth shit.
I saw a Russian analyst explain what he thinks Putin's plan is. Putin has said that he's going. He sent out something that showed him with a Lukashenko mannequin who is sitting at the end of the table, going, "Yes, yes, 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 yes." The dictator of Belarus, and Putin was asking him for permission to station nukes in Belarus, and he's going, "Yes, yes." So the Russian plan is to first put tactical nukes in and then put strategic nukes in order to avoid violating the Nuclear Proliferation Act. They will sign these over to the Belarusians, and then, of course, maintaining full control over them. And then he says they will use them and say, hey, we had nothing to do with it. The Belarusians used them. And that sounds like something, the current Russian leadership would do.
Yeah.
You know, um, from what I
They've
understand,
been doing it in Ukraine for 15 years now.
yeah, from what I understand, Putin is on another planet by now, and
Yeah,
he's lost
I
in
saw
his
him yesterday. He's lost weight.
he's lost weight, and he's lost in fantasies of the 18th century now. He's going further and further back, and
In
he's
an interview, he is talking about the war and he's showing things in the map. The map is from the 1600s,
yeah, yeah, no,
literally.
and this is such a strange era. We have Biden is falling like what, once a week now. He's tripping and falling.
Yes, somebody convinced him that he was a ripe pear. So every 3 steps, he has to fall from the tree.
So Biden's falling. He went to Poland and he stood up on stage with 3 other leaders, and he was going like this. And when he was asked about how reporters shout questions after the cameras have gone clickety click, and he was asked about something to do with any comments about the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and he said, "I don't have time." And then he kind of looked around and then shook hands with the air and walked off stage. And
That wasn't with the air. He shook hands with his puka.
oh, okay.
Don't you know we have a presidential puka?
No.
Yeah. Remember what the puka was?
No.
The Jimmy Stewart movie that he has an imaginary friend. It's a large rabbit.
Oh, I thought
The,
that
the
was
large the large rabbit, an imaginary friend that nobody else can see, is it's not a rabbit, it's a puka.
okay.
So now Biden has his own puka. And he shakes hands with his puka, talks to him. Every now and then he dives into the puka hole after him and then claims it was a sandbag.
Yeah, a
What the
sandbag.
fuck is a sandbag doing there?
Well, it wasn't. There was no sandbag.
No.
Yeah, there was this poor female officer who kind of walked up and then just made an about face and walked away. Because I don't know if you noticed, it took 2 men to like lift Biden up like a bag of sand.
Yes. And I distinctly heard people in the crowd laughing.
Oh, of course. I mean,
I know I would have.
yeah. Yeah.
All of my scruples about laughing at the disgrace of an elderly person falling, which usually I wouldn't do, are off the book when
No, I mean,
Biden is involved.
this is such a black comedy. All you can do is laugh, which brings
Yeah.
us to the black comedy of the Trump indictment.
Okay, before we talk about the black comedy of the Trump indictment, even though YouBoob now says you can talk about elections all you want, because
this indictment.
oh my God. But you know what? Fuck him. We've been there long enough. And for those of you guys watching us in YouBoob, it's time to join us in Odysee. You find both a link to Odysee and the link to this show in the description. And with that, you have a good one. We will too. And